Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Parvajikacharya Ashtoto Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parvajikacharya Ashtoto Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Page 101, Ravi. Page 101. We ran out of devotees, huh? We ran out of devotees? Laundry? Okay. Really? And what's your excuse? You're late. All right, you're excused. Tonight, once only. Did you set his page? Okay, you're all set there. Page 101. 101. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 5th day of October, 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're in Chapter 2 entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, text number 33, page 101. Atachet tvamimam dharmyam sangramam nakarishyasi tatak swadharmam kirtincha hitva papam avapsyasi. Atachet tvamimam dharmyam sangramam nakarishyasi tatak swadharmam kirtincha hitva papam avapsyasi. Atachet tvamimam dharmyam sangramam nakarishyasi tatak swadharmam kirtimcha hitva papam avapsyasi. Go ahead, Prakash. Atachet tvamimang dharmyam Sangramam na karishyasi Tatak sadharmam kirtim cha Hitva papam avapsasi. Ravi. Atachet tvamimang dharmyam Sangramam na karishyasi Tatak sadharmam kirtim cha Hitva papam avapsasi. Glenn. Atachet tvamimam dharmyam Sangramam na karishyasi Tatak swadharmam kirtim cha Hitva papam avapsasi. You want to try, Prabhu? Atachet tvamimang dharmyam Sangramam na karishyasi Tatak swadharmam kirtim cha Hitva papam avapsasi. Ata, therefore, chet, if, tvam, you, imam, this, dharmyam, as a religious duty, sangramam, fighting, do not, karishyasi, perform, tataha, then, swadharmam, your religious duty, kirtim, reputation, cha also, hitva, losing, papam, sinful reaction, avapsasi, will gain. Translation, Krishna says to Arjuna, if, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties, and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. Purport. Arjuna was a famous fighter, and he attained fame by fighting many great demigods, including even Lord Shiva. After fighting and defeating Lord Shiva in the dress of a hunter, Arjuna pleased the Lord and received as a reward a weapon called the Pashupata Astra. Everyone knew that he was a great warrior. Even Dronacharya gave him benedictions and awarded him the special weapon by which he could kill even his teacher. So he was credited with so many military certificates from many authorities, including his adoptive father, Indra. The certificates from many authorities, including but if he abandoned the battle, not only would he neglect his specific duty as a Kshatriya, but he would lose all his fame and good name, and thus prepare his royal road to hell. In other words, he would go to hell not by fighting, but by withdrawing from battle. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So Krishna has concluded his lesson on the soul with text number 30. And the whole point of that lesson was to convince Arjuna that the soul is eternal and the body is temporary. And you're lamenting for the demise of the body of your beloved teacher and grandfather Bhishma and all these other relatives and friends on both sides, actually, of the battle. So that was that lesson. That the soul never dies. Nobody's dying here, but nobody's going home, because everyone's body is going to be changed. In other words, what commonly called, they're going to be killed, whether you leave the battle or not. That was another important part of his argument, is that his attempt to see them alive and preserved is futile anyway. They're dying. That was Krishna's plan, one way or another. But now he's changed gears, and Krishna is appealing now, this little interlude here, to Arjuna's sense of kshatriyahood, his not wanting to be humiliated, and his need to go along with what all learned kshatriyas are very happy, as he said in the previous text, to get such a religious battle. In other words, it's a great fortune. It's a win-win. If you die, you'll go to heaven. If you win the battle, you'll have the kingdom on earth. So how can you lose? That's a standard argument for Kshatriyas when they're engaging in some righteous battle like this. So this is going to go on for a little while longer. He's going to appeal to Arjuna's not wanting to be defamed by all the great leaders of the warriors on the other side, both sides. And it's more or less a little interlude here of what a charioteer is supposed to do for the fighter on the chariot. There's a battle described in the Krishna book, in the 10th canto. I think they're fighting Shalva. Shalva was a pretty formidable demon. He had this incredible airplane, and he attacked Dwarka. And all the great fighters there were engaged in fighting Shalva and his minions. And at one point, Pradyumna gets injured, grievously injured. And so he's knocked unconscious. So his charioteer takes him from the battlefield so he can regain his consciousness. But when he comes to, as we say, regains consciousness, he chastises that charioteer for removing him from the battlefield. This is a great black mark on his reputation. Take me back. And he fought even more gloriously and killed the enemy like that. So this is a very big thing, is that what the Kshatriyas do. If they get injured on the back, it's a great insult. It means they're running from the battle, they get injured in the back. If they're going to get injured, you got to get injured on the chest. There's a whole ethos to this Kshatriya Dharma. So he's appealing to Arjun's dharmic and Kshatriya nature here. And it's going to go on for a few verses. Text 34. Akirtim chapi bhutani. We're on page 101. You got it? Akirtim chapi bhutani. Katayashyanti tevyam. Sambhavitasya chakirtir. Mananad atirichyate. People will always speak of your infamy. And for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. For one who is honored, dishonor is worse than death. The word akirti, infamy, is used 3 times in this verse, if you look at it carefully. So it must be pretty bad. Purport. Both as friend and philosopher to Arjuna, Lord Krishna now gives his final judgment regarding Arjuna's refusal to fight. The Lord says, Arjuna, if you leave the battlefield before the battle even begins, people will call you a coward. And if you think that people may call you bad names, but that you will save your life by fleeing the battlefield, then my advice is that you do better to die in the battle. For a respectable man like you, ill fame is worse than death. So you should not flee for fear of your life. Better to die in the battle. That will save you from the ill fame of misusing my friendship and from losing your prestige in society. So the final judgment of the Lord was for Arjuna to die in the battle and not withdraw. Bhayad Vranat Upadatam Mangsyante Tvam Maharataha Yesham Chatvam Bhavamato Bhutvaya Sasilagavam. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. Purport. Lord Krishna continued to give his verdict to Arjuna. Do not think that the great generals like Duryodhana, Karna, and other contemporaries will think that you have left the battlefield out of compassion for your brothers and grandfather. They will think that you have left out of fear for your life, and thus their high estimation of your personality will go to hell. Text 36. Avachyavadangscha bahun Parishyanti tabahitaha Dindantasthava samarthyam Tato dukkataram nukim. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? Purport. Lord Krishna was astonished in the beginning at Arjuna's uncalled for plea for compassion, and he described his compassion as befitting the non-Aryans. Now, in so many words, he has proved his statements against Arjuna's so-called compassion. Hatova prapsasi swargam jitva va bhokshase mahim tasmat uttishta kaunteya yudhaya kutanishtayah. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore get up with determination and fight. Purport. Even though there was no certainty of victory for Arjuna's side, he still had to fight. For, even being killed there, he could be elevated into the heavenly planets. 38. Sukha dukkhe samekritva labha labha jaya jaya tato yudhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsasi. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sin. Purport. Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting, because he, Krishna, desires the battle. There is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or loss, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. That everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna is transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to the reaction, good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obliged to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone, as one is in the ordinary course of activities. It is said, I'll say, you say, I'll have books. Devarshi bhutaptanrinam patrinam nakinkado nayam hrinica rajan sarvatmanayak sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam pariritya kartam. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone, not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. Bhagavatam 11.5.41. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse, and the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses. Glenn, can you check, make sure the lights are all up for me? Thank you. So this verse is often quoted, and it's very illuminating. What this verse says is that just by being born in the world, we're debtors. When you can think about it, we live a life. You get up in the morning and we just do it, and everything we're doing, we're breathing, we're using water, we're using the sunshine. I mean, the sunshine has been stored into gas and is creating electricity. Every step of the way, every breath, we're dependent on Krishna, and we're dependent on the gods, right? There's a sun god, there's an air god, there's a water god, right? Varuna, and there's Vayu, and everything. And they're all providing what we need at every moment. It's just like, somebody comes to visit you, maybe from some third world country or something. They're not aware how it works, the light in the water, and they just take it for granted. They don't understand that if you don't pay, the water will eventually be shut off, the lights will be shut off, right? It's just given. You just take it for granted. You know what I mean? So here it's reminding us we have all these debtors. You're just being born and living in the world. Devas, the rishis, the other living beings, relatives, people in general, forefathers, we owe them. And it's a debt. And if you don't pay it by performing sacrifice, samskaras, and worship, then you're a thief. A thief. That's described later in this chapter. So how to deal with that? If one sarvatmananak sharanam sharanyam, if one takes shelter of he who's worthy to take shelter of, namely the Lord, the Supreme Soul, Mukunda, then he has no debt. Pariricchakartam. Nakinkaro nayamrini charajan. One who takes shelter of Krishna and is serving Krishna is not a rini. Rini is a debtor to all of these. Nakinkaro. Kinkaro is also servants. You're also you owe them also for service. So all of the debts are wiped out. It's just like what they call what is it called, a debt jubilee? Have you ever heard of that? Where there's because we haven't had one for a long time. But in ancient times, biblical times, the king would say, "Okay, all the debts are wiped out," because in the whole land. Have you ever heard of that? And that's, can you imagine? There's like $1 trillion or more of debt. These kids who go through college, this is one of the benefits of your joining. You joined right out of high school. What, 18 now? You're 19 years old. But it's a nightmare. I mean, when I went to college, I didn't go very long, but I had a full scholarship to University of Chicago, which is almost like an Ivy League school, And even if I didn't have the scholarship, it was like $2,000 a year, something like that, room and board included, In other words, it's manageable. Now these kids come out of school, $30,000, $40,000 more of debt, and then more than that? Way more. And then where's the job that I'm supposed to get? Jobs aren't there. There's a higher percentage of young people who have graduated school between 25 and 30 living at home now, in other words, with their parents, than practically at any other time in American history. It's crazy. So debt can be a tremendous burden. Prabhupada says there's 3 things that you have to take care of right away. You know what they are? Disease, fire, and debt. Because they all get worse. If you don't do anything, they get worse. Right? Look at these fires burning. You imagine if they weren't fighting the fires, the whole state would burn. Right? It just feeds and feeds and feeds. The same thing, disease can just, can kill you if you don't take care of it. And debt, compound interest. So, this is one of the side benefits of becoming a devotee. You don't have any debts anymore. You have one big debt that you can never repay to the spiritual master. Prabhupada said you can never repay. But a real devotee is always trying to repay by service and dedication. So this is an important verse to remember. One of the great benefits of Krishna consciousness. And this point is fight for the sake of fighting. Well, the idea is don't be attached to the loss or gain. As, what is it? Sukha dukkha, somebody regarding happiness and distress as the same. Now this can only be attain that state in Krishna consciousness, because just the effort to serve Krishna is already a success. It's already a success. Krishna is looking at your intent. If you're sincerely trying to do some service, but it just doesn't happen, it failed, then you don't get discouraged and give up. Prabhupada showed this. There's a great, wonderful example of this in his struggle to secure the land in Juhu for the temple and build a beautiful temple there. He promised the deities, Radha, Rasabihari, that he would build him a temple. And then they had bought the land, they put a down payment on the land, but the guy he was a cheater. He was a crook. He had already done it several times before of getting the down payment and cheating him out of the land and then, going to the courts, and because he had a lot of influence, this guy. And so, but Prabhupada, he wanted that land, and so he moved the deities on there, and he knew that would be very difficult to get the devotees off, because you have to take the deities off. But even that, he had some influence in the police, and they attacked the little makeshift temple, and they were dismantling the temple, and devotees, mostly Americans, were there, and they were pulling some woman. I met her once in Rath Yatra many years ago in L.A. They were pulling her hair and dragging her along, and luckily we had made some friends amongst the Indians there, and they came, and they were able to get the government to call off the police, and so that was, but years before they were able to actually secure the land and then build a magnificent temple that's there now, So that was a sign. Even Prabhupada promised the deities, and even though it was so difficult living on the land, it was remote. At that point, it was remote from Bombay. I don't know if you know the history. You probably know better than me. I visited there once before the temple, several times before the temple was built. And devotees would get sick on the land, and there were rats and everything. It was very difficult to maintain that. But Prabhupada insisted. A great hero was Giriraj Swami, young boy, but very determined. He stayed there, and he managed it, and he got very great credits for that. So that what was Prabhupada doing there? In other words, he knew that just the effort, it's in Krishna's hands. The same thing when he came to America, a lone gentleman, elderly Indian, no contacts in America, no money, no followers, no big patrons. Who would undertake it? Except someone who is doing it simply out of a matter of devotion and felt, this is what Krishna wants, this is my spiritual wants, this is what Lord Chaitanya wants. I have to give it a try. Even the great odds that it would fail. And so his just attempting it was a great success. And Krishna blessed him with the most miraculous growth of this movement. We're sitting here because he persisted. He was determined. So that's what it means here, to fight for the sake of fighting. He's not fighting, Prabhupada fought, and he did what he did for the sake of Krishna. But the effort itself was a success. And for a long time in many venues he failed. There was no tangible progress. And sometimes big setbacks. But still, pushing on. That's what a devotee, because the effort itself is a success, because you're feeling Krishna's presence and you're sacrificing for Krishna. So that's what comes out of this. And that never incurs sin. There's no sin. You're getting free of sinful reactions from before, and you're not incurring any new sin at all. Rather, you're developing your love for Krishna, which is the greatest treasure. All right, moving on. Now, so that's the end of that little section. It was kind of an interlude, and we won't hear that kind of argument again. That was the last of the pure Kshatriya talk. Now he goes on to Buddhi Yoga, this whole section now, because it's a summary, so there's a little of everything here in this second chapter. Esha te bihita sankye buddhi yoge timam shanu buddhya yukto yaya parta karma bandham prahasisi. Thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruit of results. O son of Prita, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. Purport. According to the Nirukti, or Vedic dictionary, Sankhya, does it say Sankhya there? It should be a long A, Sankhya, means that which describes things in detail. Oh no, I'm wrong. Sankhya means that which describes things in detail. Yeah, it's Sankhya, it says here. And then Sankhya refers to that philosophy which describes the real nature of the soul. Okay. And yoga involves controlling the senses. Arjuna's proposal not to fight was based on sense gratification. Forgetting his prime duty, he wanted to cease fighting, because he thought that by not killing his relatives and kinsmen, he would be happier than by enjoying the kingdom after conquering his cousins and brothers, the sons of Dhritarashtra. In both ways, the basic principles were for sense gratification. Now, if you remind me, I'd like to show you a important revision that I made in this chapter at the end, 271, and it's based on this. Part of it is based on what we just read, how Arjuna was thinking of his own sense gratification in wanting not to fight. Happiness derived from conquering them and happiness derived by seeing kinsmen alive are both on the basis of personal sense gratification, even at the sacrifice of wisdom and duty. Krishna therefore wanted to explain to Arjuna that by killing the body of his grandfather, that's Bhishma, he would not be killing the soul proper. And Krishna explained that all individual persons, including the Lord himself, are eternal individuals. They were individuals in the past, they were individuals in the present, and they will continue to remain individuals in the future, because all of us are individual souls eternally. We simply change our bodily dress in different manners, but actually we keep our individuality even after liberation from the bondage of material dress. An analytical study of the soul and the body has been very graphically explained by Lord Krishna. And this descriptive knowledge of the soul and the body from different angles of vision has been described here as Sankhya, in terms of the Nirukti dictionary. This Sankhya has nothing to do with the Sankhya philosophy of the atheist Kapila. Long before the impostor Kapila's Sankhya, the Sankhya philosophy was expounded in the Srimad Bhagavatam by the true Lord Kapila, the incarnation of Lord Krishna, who explained it to his mother, Devahuti. It is clearly explained by him that the Purusha, or the Supreme Lord, is active and that he creates by looking over the Prakriti. This is accepted in the Vedas and in the Gita. The description in the Vedas indicates that the Lord glanced over the Prakriti, or nature, and impregnated it with atomic individual souls. All these individuals are working in the material world for sense gratification. And under the spell of material energy, they are thinking of being enjoyers. This mentality is dragged to the last point of liberation when the living entity wants to become one with the Lord. This is the last snare of Maya, or sense gratificatory illusion. And it is only after many, many births of such sense gratificatory activities that a great soul surrenders unto Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, thereby fulfilling the search after the ultimate truth. Arjuna has already accepted Krishna as his spiritual master by surrendering himself unto him. Shishyastehang sharimam tvam papannam. That's verse 7 in this chapter. Consequently, Krishna will now tell him about the working process in Buddhi Yoga, or Karma Yoga, or in other words, the practice of devotional service only for the sense gratification of the Lord. This Buddhi Yoga is clearly explained in chapter 10, verse 10, as being direct communion with the Lord, who is sitting as Paramatma in everyone's heart. But such communion does not take place without devotional service. One who is therefore situated in devotional or transcendental loving service to the Lord, or in other words, in Krishna consciousness, attains to this stage of Buddhi Yoga, or the special grace of the Lord. The Lord says, therefore, that only to those who are always engaged in devotional service out of transcendental love does He award the pure knowledge of devotion in love. In that way, the devotee can reach Him easily in the ever blissful kingdom of God. Thus, the Buddhi Yoga mentioned in this verse is the devotional service of the Lord. And the word Sankhya mentioned herein has nothing to do with the atheistic Sankhya Yoga enunciated by the impostor Kapila. One should not, therefore, misunderstand that the Sankhya Yoga mentioned herein has any connection with the atheistic Sankhya. Nor did that philosophy have any influence during that time, nor would Lord Krishna care to mention such godless philosophical speculations. Real Sankhya philosophy is described by Lord Kapila in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but even that Sankhya has nothing to do with the current topics. Here, Sankhya means analytical description of the body and the soul. Lord Krishna made an analytical description of the soul just to bring Arjuna to the point of Buddhi Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Lord Krishna's Sankhya and Lord Kapila's Sankhya, as described in the Bhagavatam, are one and the same. They are all Bhakti Yoga. Lord Krishna said, therefore, that only the less intelligent class of men make a distinction between Sankhya Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Sankhya Yoga Pratagbala Pravadanti Napandita. That's in chapter 5. Of course, atheistic Sankhya Yoga has nothing to do with Bhakti Yoga, yet the unintelligent claim that the atheistic Sankhya Yoga is referred to in the Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore understand that Buddhi Yoga means to work in Krishna consciousness in the full bliss and knowledge of devotional service. One who works for the satisfaction of the Lord only, however difficult such work may be, is working under the principles of Buddhi Yoga and finds himself always in transcendental bliss. By such transcendental engagement, one achieves all transcendental understanding automatically, by the grace of the Lord. And thus his liberation is complete in itself, without his making extraneous endeavors to acquire knowledge. There is much difference between work in Krishna consciousness and work for fruit of results, especially in the matter of sense gratification for achieving results in terms of family or material happiness. Buddhi Yoga is therefore the transcendental quality of the work that we perform. So, quite a rich purport there. And Prabhupada makes the point again and again that Sankhya here doesn't refer to the atheist Sankhya. Now, what Sankhya did we experience in this chapter? Basically, it's Krishna again and again distinguishing the soul from the body and giving a detailed description of the qualities of the soul and making it very clear that it cannot be injured, cannot be cut, cannot be burned, cannot be dried, cannot be moistened. So this is what we've heard, and two of the most important verses. This Najayate Mriyate Vakadachan Hayam Budva Bhavita Vanabuya Arjo Nityak Shastratoyam Purano Nahanyate Hanamane Shirire. Prabhupada quoted this verse all the time. For the soul is never birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, is not coming into being, will not come into being. In other words, every soul exists right now, is as eternal as Krishna is. And then he makes, he just, brings it home. He is ajo nitya shashvata yam purano nahanyate hanyamane shiriri. The unborn, eternal, ever-existing, written primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So this is a key verse, because as I like to say, in Krishna consciousness, we kind of take it for granted that we're souls, we're spirit souls. I mean, we may have some bodily concept of life, but that's the overall ground of our understanding of what we're doing, that we're spirit souls. But for someone who's just coming to that realization, who lives in this dark age in which people, from birth are in the bodily concept of life, and there's no talk of the soul, mention of the soul, it's just, this is what I am. What are you talking about? People don't understand anything. So when you first encounter this philosophy and it's brought home to you and you start to live on it, live it, it changes everything. It changes your whole perspective of what's important in life. If I'm eternal, then how can I just be absorbed in the temporary doings of this body? It's a huge mistake. It's Maya's great trick, trying to convince us that all of this material business is all important, when actually it's not. So often, I hear Prabhupada's lectures every day. I have listened, and today he was reiterating something he said many times before. That I remember the beginning of the second canto in the purport series, so how material life is like a dream, or like it's like a bubble in the ocean. Like our relatives and people we meet and all, and our relationship with this particular body. It's just like the bubbles of foam you see in the, if you could walk down and how long does that last? The little bubbles are together, then they go and dissipate forever. It doesn't mean anything. Now, but we put all the meaning in our temporary little family and relation with this particular body. That's all. So once you get this perspective, you take a long view. Break out of this little view of this 70, 80 years, whatever it's going to be, and you're seeing that that's what I should work for. I have to cultivate my understanding and my life activities according to that eternal perspective, and really staying on that and not falling back into the immediate bodily concerns. You have to take care of the body, obviously, and keep body and soul together. But that shouldn't be your main soul absolute concern. That's the fight. And so this Buddhi Yoga here is the intelligence, with your intelligence, keeping that vision of the soul separate from the body in mind, and always acting on the soul platform, which means in relationship to the Supreme Soul, Krishna. So this Buddhi Yoga will come up. Now Prabhupada, he also refers to the 10th chapter. He's referring to these 4 famous verses that are said to be the 4 essential verses of Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattak sarvam pravartate itam vidvabhajantai mam buddha bhava samanvita. I am the source of everything. Everything is emanating from me. The wise who understand this perfectly worship me with all their heart. So in that one verse you have Sambandha and Abhideya started. Sambandha is Krishna. Knowing Krishna, his energies, and our relationship to this world and to God. All of that is Sambandha. And then the practice of Krishna consciousness, yoga, which gives you realization of this, and deepens your realization, that's called Abhideya. So here he said, someone who understands that I am God worships me with all my... Well, how does he worship? That's in the next verse. Matchitta, put your mind on me. Well, the easiest way to do that now is by chanting the holy name, practicing Bhakti Yoga as Lord Chaitanya taught. But that's it. Matchitta, matgata prana. That the life force, like energy, is dedicated to me in so many activities. Bodhi antak parasparam. And devotees get together and glorify me. Why did Prabhupada start all these classes? And the most obvious means of doing that is coming together in kirtan, sankirtan. I chant, you hear, you chant, I hear. That's bodhi antak parasparam. Katayantas chamam nityam, always glorifying me, tushyanti chadamanti cha, become full satisfaction and spiritual bliss. Then the next verse is the verse Prabhupada referred to. Tesham, to those who are acting in this way. Satati yuktanam, always linked to me in Bhakti Yoga in these ways. Bhajatam priti purvakam, worshipping me with love and devotion. Dadami, buddhi yogam tam, there's the word buddhi yoga again. I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. So Krishna is with us in the heart. when he sees that we're serving him and trying, then he gives us more intelligence to stay on the path. He cleanses the unwanted anarthas in the heart. So that's, and then the last verse, this 4, that was 3 verses. Buddhi yogam didami yena mamapi yanti tesham evana kampatam hama jnana jantama nashayam yatma bhavasto jnana deepena basata. I, out of my compassion for them. So Krishna is not just a neutral observer here. He loves. Now he's acting out of compassion. Now this word anukampa is very interesting. You may recall, when we sing the morning song, what is it? Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nritya Gita, Vadita Madan, Manasomani, Romancha Kumpa Shutaranga Bhajo. So this listing the different ecstatic symptoms. The second one is kampa, trembling in ecstasy. That's kampa. So here it says, what is it? Tesham evan kampartam. Where's the kampa is here? See? Anukampa means I'm trembling, or I'm feeling compassion for them. I'm empathy. This is absolute empathy of Krishna. It's a word for compassion. It means I feel your pain. I'm going to do something about it. That's compassion, right? So Tesham evan kampartam, Krishna says, Ahama jnana jamtamaha nashiyami. I destroy the darkness of ignorance in their heart. Voluntarily. He's there already. He destroys it with the shining lamp of knowledge out of his compassion. So he's reciprocating his bhakti. And what is Arjuna? What's the result of all this? This instruction. Arjuna then says, "Oh, I accept it. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shashvatam." He says, "Oh, now I see. You're God. You're the supreme Brahma. You're the supreme purifier." Now, Prabhupada sometimes says, and this is the Bhagavad Gita is concluded here. He said, "Well, Arjuna now accepts Krishna as the supreme. Now, of course, he'll fight, right? I mean." But no, he said. Then he says, "Please tell me how we can meditate on you in this world." Now he's asking that, and then Krishna has so many detailed of aquatics on the shark, of bodies of water on the ocean, of daityas on Palad. There's a whole list, right? And said, "Well, what's the need for all of this?" At the end of the chapter, there's all this detail. With a single spark of my splendor, I support this whole. Whenever you see anything splendorous or wondrous, you see, oh, this is Krishna's power. But Krishna asked the question for our sake. He's already sitting there with Krishna, and he recognizes him as God. He glorifies, and the rest of the Gita just extrapolates on some of the themes that's already been spoken. So it's interesting. All right, before we run out of time, I want to point out this find I found, which to this day no one picked up on it. So if you will turn to page 135, there's a verse near the end there. And now you remember we read text 39. Now one of the things we read here was that Arjuna's proposal not to fight was based on sense gratification. Right, we read that. And then he continues, forgetting his prime duty, he wanted to cease fighting because he thought that by not killing his relatives and kinsmen, he would be happier than by enjoying the kingdom after conquering his cousins and brothers, his cousins basically, the sons of Dhritarashtra. In both ways, the basic principle was for sense gratification. Okay, now keep that in mind. Now we go to the purport to 71. The verse says, if you look at the bottom of 135, a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Right? Now, let's just read this purport. To become desireless. So the desirelessness is here, nikspriha, at the end of the first line there. That word is desireless, and Prabhupada is picking up on that both in the translation and in this purport. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Now the next sentence is the one I revised. Now listen carefully. He says, Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense satisfaction. Now, what does that mean for you? It means, obviously, he didn't want to fight for his own sense gratification. But that's not what it means. That is not what it means. It means the reason Arjuna did not want to fight was for his own sense gratification. You understand the difference there? It's not that he didn't want to fight for his own sense gratification. It's that he wanted to satisfy his senses by not fighting. You see the distinction? So that's the revision. Arjuna wanted to satisfy his own senses. Now, the previous sentence ended, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna wanted to satisfy his own senses by not fighting. But when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, it's like that. So that was something that nobody noticed until I picked up on it. I'm reading that and says, is that really right? But I remember from 39 where it says, no, he wanted to not fight for his own sense gratification. Not that he didn't want to fight for his sense. You see the way, it's a tricky language, and it's because Prabhupada, English is a second language. Prabhupada wrote this, and he wrote it. He typed this. He didn't dictate this. This is not somebody's misdictation. It's just the vicissitudes and the difficulties of the English language sometimes gets a little trick. And because it makes some sense, and you would think, oh yeah, I remember where Arjuna said, I don't want to fight because even if I get the kingdom, it'll be soaked with the blood of my relatives. So that must be what he's referring to. But no. The whole meaning is changed. Arjuna wanted to gratify his own senses by not fighting. So that's what I do all day. I look for mistakes. So this was one that I was going to call your attention to. And there's others that we can have. Okay, so it's a little early. Let's see, how far did we get? 39, that was 39. Okay. All right, why don't we read one more? Text 40. Now this is a very important verse. A lot of devotees kind of breathe a sigh of relief when they read this verse. It's encouraging to everyone. Neha brahmanashosti pratyavayo navidyate svalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahatobhayat. In this endeavor, what is the endeavor? Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness. In this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. And a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Another way of saying is the most fearful type of danger. Purport. Activity in Krishna consciousness or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%, whereas in material activity, without 100% success, there's no profit. Think of building a bridge. The building of the Brooklyn Bridge was an amazing technological feat at that time. I think the early 20th century, something like that, or in the end of the 19th century. But suppose they had, worked and bought the money and hired everyone and built the bridge, but they built, 99%. So there's a gap. What good is the bridge, right? No good. So, but if you're doing it for Krishna, he's recognized the effort, even if something happens and you can't finish. 1% done in Krishna is so as an ikpani. Okay, a Jamil performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100% by the grace of the Lord. There's a nice verse in this connection in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17. I'll say, you say. Chakva swadharmam chadanam bhujang harer bhajanna bhakvo tapate tato yadi yatra kvavabhadram abhura mushtikim Kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmataha. If someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly? Or as the Christians say, what profiteth a man if he gain the whole world, yet suffer the loss of his eternal soul? Material activities and their results end with the body. But work in Krishna consciousness carries a person again to Krishna consciousness even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of a great cultured Brahmin or in a rich aristocratic family that will give one a further chance for elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness. And so there's a nice verse I just thought of to show of the determination of great devotees to continue serving even in great difficulty, knowing that the Lord will eventually give one success. So this one is written by Rupa Goswami, and Prabhupada quotes it in a purport in the second canto. Vidachay mahidandam dinabando dayangva gatanihita bhavatta kachad anyamamasti nipatata shatakoti nirmalang vanavambas tadapakita payodak stuyate chatakena. The chataka subsists on rain it catches in midair, and so it's always praying to the cloud to send its fare. Yet though that cloud may send a thunderbolt instead of rain, that bird continues praying fervently despite the pain. Just like the chataka, I fix my mind upon one goal, and that is you, O Lord, most kind to every fallen soul. So whether it is punishment you give or mercy sweet, I'll always pray to you for service to your lotus feet. So it contains an important lesson, that in the inevitable reverses of living in this material world, even as devotees, we can't discard our devotional service, saying, well, I've been serving so long, chanting so long, and this happens? This happened to me? Forget it. We have to continue to pray, because that praying is itself a success. That's the idea, is have faith that Krishna will exalt in the end, even in the next body. We won't lose anything. Okay, thank you. If there's any questions or comments, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your attention. And that includes any internet participants. Thank you. So we'll begin with text 42 tomorrow. Hare Krishna.